In 2025, Six Flags Great America will be debuting a brand new roller coaster called Wrath of Rakshasa. It's a B&M dive coaster standing 180 feet tall, max speed 67 miles per hour, sending riders down a 96-degree drop. That makes it the steepest dive coaster in the world, beating out Dr. Diabolical and Iron Menace by 1 degree. In this video, we'll dive into the layout, talking about all the different elements, what you can expect with this new roller coaster. And the first thing we got to cover is the name. What the heck is Rakshasa? I certainly had to Google it myself. It is a Hindu demon or goblin. They can change shape at will to appear however they want. Maybe in this case it manifests itself as a roller coaster. I don't know. I'm just glad it's not another superhero name. But I do think with a name like that, it has potential to be well themed. But I worry that Six Flags Great America is not going to do that because they don't really have any roller coasters here that I would consider well themed. They're stylized, how about that? So maybe we'll get a nice sign or something. I don't expect them to go all out like the queue for Dr. Diabolical, though that would be pretty awesome, I'm not going to lie. But with a name like Wrath of Rakshasa, knowing what it means, I'm surprised that they went with blue track. I would have expected something darker, but it looks great. I think it's really going to pop in the skyline, and some people point out it might even be that way as a tribute to Shockwave. That was a previous big multi-looper at Six Flags Great America that closed a while back. We love paying homage to past attractions, and speaking of former roller coasters, the last big coaster that was in this plot of land where Wrath of Rakshasa is going was Deja Vu, a giant inverted boomerang. But talk about fitting a big roller coaster in a rather compact space. They aren't even touching the go-karts like everyone thought. Instead, all they're removing is Buccaneer Battle, which has actually been closed for a bit anyways. The way they're able to fit in so much ride is because they are really using the pathway to their advantage. This thing will go directly overhead of other guests, and the photo ops are going to be awesome. You're going to be able to stand underneath the first drop. And the big thing with this coaster is they are incorporating the most inversions on any other dive coaster. This ride will flip you upside down 5 times. And it's a pretty clever layout. There's some very unique moments on here. I would say this is like the most layout you get from a dive coaster. You know, one of the big common complaints with these rides is that they're one-trick ponies. I don't think this is going to be a one-trick pony at all. Six Flags Great America is known for having some short rides, and I'm not going to pretend like this is the longest coaster in the world, but it's also incorporating quite a few elements. And it does that without incorporating a mid-course brake run. So there will be no slow moments, which is awesome to see. Now, we do not have an on-ride POV to show yet because the park has not released one, so we're a little limited on footage, but it looks like from the station, you're going to take a right-hand turn and start up your 180-foot climb. It is 3 feet taller than Deja Vu. It is also the 3rd tallest coaster currently operating in the park, just behind Raging Bull and, surprisingly, Vertical Velocity. But shout out to Goliath, that has a drop that is equal to this height. But technically, this will be taller and is beating out Max Force by only 5 feet. From the top, we have a slight left-handed turn, just enough to angle yourself towards Demon. You're going to get an amazing view up there of Raging Bull and Max Force. And then in classic dive coaster fashion, you're going to hang over the drop. You'll plunge down at a 96-degree angle. So if you've done a ride like Dr. Diabolical or Iron Menace, I fully anticipate this drop to feel pretty much the same as those. Interestingly enough, all 3 of the past dive coasters that have opened up in the US go beyond vertical. Our first inversion, of course, is an Immelman. Like every other dive coaster, this bumps up against the top of Demon, so that's going to make that ride experience a lot different. I know people are really glad that Demon is staying. There's some speculation that thing might be closing, but it isn't going anywhere. As you exit out of the Immelman, you're going to fly over the entrance to Demon and into a dive loop. So interesting that they put in an Immelman and dive loop back to back, which is essentially the same moment except you're entering from opposite directions. This element is positioned right up against X-Flight's first drop. So this is another moment where you're literally going to be right next to the pathway. There'll be some really good photo ops. From the dive loop, we then plunge into a 0G roll. And the shaping here is really interesting because you exit higher up so that you can take a left-handed swooping turn. It honestly reminds me of a step-up underflip. This is an element that you can find on a ride like Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. It's essentially an inversion that you take where you exit up towards the top and then swoop underneath yourself. So pretty cool that they incorporated that. But the most unique element comes up next. Here we have a demonic knot. This can only be found on one other roller coaster. It is Flugder Dämonen at Heide Park in Germany. So this will be the first one in the US. It's basically just a corkscrew and a barrel roll where one is positioned on top of the other. But it's very cool looking, and that completes all of your inversions. Following that, we have a bank to the left. You then switch to a right-handed helix, and then you enter a brake run. Hopefully you pull some good forces there at the end. But overall, it is a pretty clever layout. I'm actually very impressed with what Six Flags Great America came up with. I think it's going to look great in the park, and it's sure to be a people eater. The general public will love it, and this thing is going to be high capacity. So that line is going to move quickly, which is important at Six Flags Great America because they get very busy. Now, overall speaking, how do I like the addition? Well, as far as dive coasters go, I think it's going to be great. One of, if not, the best in the US. Currently, my favorite here is Emperor, and I like it so much because of what comes after that drop. I think it's a good layout, and I think this has the potential to top it. But personally, a dive coaster wouldn't have been my first pick for Great America. I feel like they have a lot of B+ coasters, and they're missing that like A+ ride. Like the closest they get, in my opinion, is Goliath. I'd give that like an A. So many of their rides are like good supporting rides, and I feel like they're missing that one coaster that's like, yes, that is the ride. Again, you get pretty close with Goliath, but in my opinion, this is another supporting lineup attraction, which is great. Again, I think it will be one of the best coasters in the park, and it's good for the space that it occupies, but I don't think it's what I personally would have picked. But it doesn't mean that we can't one day get there. This is actually the longest gap that Six Flags Great America has gone without adding a new roller coaster in quite some time. Their most recent addition was Max Force in 2019. Obviously, the pandemic had something to do with that, but prior to this, Great America was one of Six Flags' favorite children. They were getting a new coaster every couple of years, and with the attendance they pull, it makes sense. So yes, this wouldn't have been my first choice, but I doubt that we're gonna have to wait another 6 years for another big roller coaster. So for those who are suggesting an RMC Raptor or an SNS Axis, something crazy like that, don't count it out. It just means that they'll have to save it for another plot of land. Which, even though Great America looks landlocked, clearly they've had no problem getting creative, finding unique places to fit in those rides, and Wrath of Rakshasa is proof of that. I imagine there's a good chunk of people who have been to Great America that have never actually experienced a dive coaster. Probably the closest one that you're going to get here is Cedar Point, so I'm sure there will be some overlap. But if you're like me and were underwhelmed by Valraven, I hope Wrath of Rakshasa makes up for it. As long as it's smooth, I think it'll be fine. And the only reason I bring that up is because the past couple B&Ms have not been that way, and it's disappointing. Even other dive coasters like Dr. Diabolical and Iron Menace are not as smooth as they could be because you have dive coasters that are over 10 years old that are still running like they opened yesterday. And so whatever B&M was doing back then, I hope they bring over to Great America, and assuming they do, we'll be golden. So let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of Wrath of Rakshasa coming to Six Flags Great America in 2025? Let me know if you agree with the points that I brought up, and if you're new to Coaster Studios, I'd love if you could subscribe. We do analyses of new roller coasters announced for parks all over the world. You can find them in a playlist. It's a great way to learn about upcoming rides at a park near you. And of course, stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.